And we're back. All right. So we're back, convincing idiots here, and we're going to now go through the worst series finales. Talk about that. Um, some of the Nick, you said that you hadn't heard, I'm sorry, you haven't seen a lot of these shows, let alone the series finales of some of the ones we had talked about.
That is correct, yes. So I'll be asking a lot of questions in this next segment just to try to probably get some ground here to see what's
Would
going
you say
on.
we're here to convince you?
Yes, yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
sure.
all right.
I would say that. So you're gonna
You
convince
said
me
that.
A,
You
why
said
to
that.
watch these shows, and B, why they're bad. Or why they
Right.
end bad, I should say.
I don't know anything about that show, but it sounds horrible. Good job.
I think I'll watch it because I know it ends terribly. That sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Well, Nick, you said your worst was Game of Thrones. I've never watched one full episode of Game of Thrones
Is
in
that
my life.
right? Is
Same.
that right? Brian,
I
that
don't wa
surprises me with you especially.
you know
It
what? For
seems
me
like
personally, I've never got as much into the dragons and elves and all personally. Like I like Lord of the Rings was good,
yeah.
long, long, long. The Hobbit was. I don't even think I watched all the Hobbit movies, and I liked the animated stuff as a kid. But
Yeah.
anyways, the Game of Thrones.
So
it was on HBO, right?
it was on
Game of Thrones.
HBO. Quick background: there are no elves. So
Okay.
if you can do Lord of the Rings, honestly, it's just medieval times things.
Yeah.
The only thing that is fantastical and crazy or whatever, I shouldn't say the only thing, but the main thing is the dragons. The dragons are probably throwing you. It's honestly, it's a drama set in that time. The
Okay.
dragons are the thing that are outlandish or whatever, but the rest is all. I mean, there's some, I don't know if you want to call it magic or whatever. There's things going on there. Um, Game of Thrones. I think you would really enjoy it, Brian. You really have to do out full disclosure to get into it. You have to make yourself sit through. I would say the first two episodes. By the third episode, you're hooked. But the first two, you gotta make yourself sit through 2 hours. But after that, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of dialogue. It's a very intricate plot line with a lot of different families, a lot of different things going on. And off the top, you don't know why you should care about any of these people, but eventually you do. So Game of Thrones is on my worst because I think I had mentioned previously part of the reason it's on my worst is because it's one of my favorite shows of all time as far as storytelling goes, as far as the writing goes, and um, a lot of people obviously know that it's based off of a book series, and the first season pretty much follows the first book to a T. Um, the second season, same thing. Only problem is they get off track a little bit, right? There's 8 total seasons of Game of Thrones. Um, Problem is George R. R. Martin, who wrote the books, has only gone so far. He hasn't actually finished this story yet. So anyway, the people writing the show had to basically go off on their own at a certain point, try to kind of make their own story towards the last season and a half, and basically at the end, Game of Thrones has been a giant cash cow for HBO. I'm not still to this day not sure why they felt they needed to end it when they did. But they decided that season 8 was going to be the last season. That's it. We're done. This is going to be the last season. There was no pressure to end it that I know of. No pressure to end it, but 8th season was going to be it. So instead of doing a 10 or 12 episode one or 10 or 12 season, I'm sorry, 10 or 12 1 hour episode seasons. They decided to do like 6 episodes, and they were all like an hour and a half long. So it started out slow. Everybody's kind of wondering what's going on. And then at the end, they kind of cram a bunch of shit together. And I don't know many Game of Thrones fans that are happy with the way it ended. It just kind of, there were a lot of theories out there, a lot of ways that could kind of mess with your mind, kind of, bring in past storylines, things like that. Um, they just didn't capitalize on any of it. And it just felt like we had 7 years of amazing content built up all to be shat away in what was probably like 9 hours of television. That, I mean, there were some good episodes for people who watch Game of Thrones. There was the final battle between the White Walkers and the people and the people in the North at the Wall. That was a great episode. There was questionable filming. Everybody said it was filmed dark. I think that was done by design so that you would feel in the moment, in disarray and confused. There were like a couple good episodes in that last season, but ultimately that big build up at the end that you're waiting for, that ending, it just didn't pay off. It felt lazy, and I don't know many people that were happy with it. So
yeah,
I would still
go ahead.
Sorry, I would still suggest anyone to watch the series. I know that sounds kind of dumb to say it ends really shitty, but seriously, there's 7 seasons of incredible television. Incredible. It's just beautifully done. The last season, you should probably do your due diligence and finish it and watch it, but you're going to be disappointed. But the first 7 seasons are nothing short of incredible. And if the 8th season had ended in a way that left me fulfilled or made me feel good, or they made it very original, it would probably be my favorite television series of all time. But it didn't give me the zoink, man. It didn't do it.
Yeah, I've heard Dean compared to Game of Thrones. A lot of good build up, but disappointing at the end.
Yeah.
That's how I have sex.
That was the joke.
That was the joke. Yeah. If you have to explain the jokes, life is not worth living. An old movie quote.
I'm sorry. I was very distracted.
Yeah, you're like grinning like an idiot over there. You're like grinning like an idiot. What are you grinning at?
Yeah, I kept looking away from you.
Okay, let me explain.
You're making fumble over words.
Okay, so Nick and I off screen, we're talking about when we're filming this, and for the podcast, we are filming this video that you can watch on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot. But Nick and I were talking about looking in, because we have the camera in panoramic view, so it's different from when you look at the camera to when you look at each other.
Right.
And Nick and I were talking about that. It's weird because like when we're talking, we're kind of looking at you guys, so it looks like we're looking off camera, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
While Nick is giving this amazing explanation of Game of Thrones, Brian is just staring into my soul through the actual camera. So like, he's just staring at me, and it was just like he didn't look off camera. He didn't look at you talking. He was looking at the camera itself. So I apologize.
I forget that whole dynamic, because when I was talking about the episodes, I kept fumbling over shit because you're staring at me and grinning, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is he doing?
I apologize. Brian was just staring at my soul, and like he just looked away.
Okay,
so
I think we all basically need to get cameras that mount on top of our screens.
Yes, right on
if we
top.
do this again,
yes.
Because it's just too weird. But yeah, no, okay. Glad we cleared that up.
One thing I did want to take away from what you were saying about Game of Thrones is that you said the last season or episode or whatnot seemed like they crammed everything into into one shot.
The last two episodes specifically, they felt that because everybody, I remember a lot of the talk online. I mean, this was widely considered to be one of the last, in the time that we live in, one of the last TV series that everybody kind of huddled around and watched live, because it was such a big deal. And there were so many years, and it was so highly acclaimed that everybody's like, man, this last season of Game of Thrones, this is like, nobody gathers around a TV anymore and watches things in real time. And now, with Twitter and the conversation and stuff, like, it's important to be watching it as it happens. And throughout the entire series, I'm sorry, not the entire series, the entire final season, there was a lot of kind of slow build up, and everybody's like, they've only got 8 episodes. When is shit really gonna hit the fan? When are they gonna
the last 2 2
They have
episodes
so
that
many
could
things
do
to wrap
one
up. Yeah, and then there was a final couple episodes where it felt like they're really rushing a lot of things. Almost kind of gives me flashbacks to when we were talking about Star Wars. It's like,
Right.
they kind of moved slow at the end, and then bam, stuff started happening. They were kind of cramming everything into the final episode there. So it was similar to Game of Thrones. Last 2 episodes, they really felt like they're like, all right, we got to tie this up. And that's the thing I just didn't understand. I'm like, they made so much money for HBO. They were by far their biggest television series and so popular that I'm like, why didn't you just do it right? Take your time, really write it out. Take a couple more. No one's forcing you out the door. Just take your time with it. But yeah, it was kind of awkward the way it ended.
Hmm. And you bring up an interesting point too with the when the series. I mean, because you're right, they set that up like the old like an old they put one episode out a week, right?
Yep.
And they got people talking. It got people coming together, like you say, and buzzing about it.
Yeah.
And that's probably one reason why they're doing that with the Mandalorian, right? With
yeah.
Disney, it's like it's more of an event again. You're waiting for it, the anticipation, and like you say, just I mean, everything you said is what I heard just in social media and stuff. Just the payoff was not. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
All right.
We had watch parties at our house on like Sundays were Game of Thrones nights. I mean, that was the thing. Like we'd get beer and stuff, and we'd have friends over and watch Game of Thrones. So.
But I think that's what as we continue to go through this, I think that you're going to find that is a common theme in a lot of these series is the shoehorning of, you get to the last couple episodes or even last season to where like the writers just go, okay, we got to fix all this shit that we did throughout the series that we, that all our fans are expecting to be paid off. So let's shoehorn it in last and just get it out there. Last episode or, last couple episodes. So I think that's one thing that we are going to find in talking about a lot of these series.
So Dean, so that was Nick's worst. So like, that's the only worst one you had, Nick, right?
Yeah, that was really my bad one. Yeah.
Okay. So Dean, you had like How I Met Your Mother and
yeah, I mean, my worst are the 3 worst that I have on my list. Oddly enough, actually not oddly enough. I think it actually makes perfect sense. As like Nick said, 3 of my favorite series, they just ended them horribly. I mean, I think if you watched a series that you're kind of on the fence about it, I watch it. It's not my favorite, and it had a shitty ending. You're like, okay, But if you love a show and you have so much passion, and it ends horribly, I think it angers you that much more.
Yeah, and if you didn't care about it, it wouldn't matter so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like How I Met Your Mother, you spent 7 years telling these 2 children how I met your mother, just to go, and then she died of cancer. It doesn't make sense.
Now, I know that, Dad. You don't have to bring it back up.
Right, exactly. Now, the one thing, the beauty about that is they did do a because they caught so much hell on the other side of that, is that they went ahead and made a YouTube video and they edited together and did an alternate ending to where she didn't die and they lived happily ever after, which should have been the ending of this series. It didn't make sense. And Seinfeld, I think we touched on that. It's Brian. We have it on the list too.
Yeah, Seinfeld was. It's one of the. I agree with you. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. Very clever, great humor. I mean, there wasn't anything profound. They didn't have to do a whole bunch to wrap that up decently. I did kind of like the teaser they had in there where, they're on the airplane and it looks like the airplane's going down for a second and Elaine was about ready to tell Jerry that she loved him, at least you thought. Right. And they said, no, the plane's okay and everything was fine. It was like, oh, well, that's kind of an interesting twist there to kind of do a traditional series ending. And no, that's not what we're doing. But
it's very Seinfeld to do that.
Yeah. I didn't like how they made fun of the overweight guy and stuff, and then that's what got them in trouble and got them arrested and all that. And then they were on trial for being horrible people.
Wait, what?
That was so they were in this. The plane had to land in another city or something to get fixed or some layover somewhere.
Hold on. Before that, the series finale starts with Jerry is going to get his own TV show.
Right.
About nothing.
The pilot was picked up. That was a premise.
Their dreams are going to come
true. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So they get on a plane to go to Los Angeles.
Right. But they get arrested for making fun of an overweight guy? Is that what you said?
What? Okay. Brian, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, they land, and they're somewhere in this small town, and they don't they like film a guy, an overweight guy, for making fun of him, or they film them.
In New York, you know, every day you watch something bad happen and you just laugh at it. You know, they're from New York, so you know it's nothing to them. So they see a fat guy get mugged, and the three of them literally film it with their phone and laugh at it. And come to find out, the city passed a Good Samaritan ordinance that if you see something bad happening, you have to intervene somehow. They didn't, so they were arrested for not intervening, which is silly. It really was just a take on society of, you know, see something, say something. It was really just a mirror to that.
Maybe I missed this, and maybe it was meant. Does this take place in the future?
No. I mean,
how did they recorded something on their phone?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they had a camcorder or something.
Well, this was
maybe I'm getting lost in details, but I'm like, did Seinfeld predict the future? Did they know we'd have cameras?
No, maybe they had
89 to 98. So by 98, there were cell phones at 98.
Yes, I can't remember.
Not that took video, right?
Maybe I'm you saying that. I think they might have had a camcorder.
Okay.
Because
maybe
they were
didn't even film it. Maybe they didn't film it. Maybe it was just that they were making. Maybe they just didn't do anything. That's what it was. I think somebody witnessed them.
No, they did film it because that was part of the evidence. Because I remember them chuckling when they heard themselves making fun of the fact.
That's right. I think it was a cell. It might have been it doesn't matter. But
right.
They filmed it.
Sorry, I
threw filmed it somehow, and the court was kind of funny because, like Dean said earlier, I mean, they literally brought out every major character that was ever on the series was in that courtroom and made an appearance. You know, the soup Nazi and all these, they were character witnesses that came out of the woodwork to testify against them, that they were self-absorbed, bad people, ex people they dated and everything.
That's kind of what the show was about, them being shitty people.
Right. And then that's kind of how it wound up, is that they were found guilty of being bad people, and they were just together doing the same stuff, talking about themselves and everything else. And
they were,
like you say, that's kind of how it wrapped up.
And in the final scene, they were in the holding cell at, you know, basement of the courtroom, holding cell to wait to go to prison or jail, whatever.
Right.
And the camera's panning down away from them, and George is wearing a button-up shirt, and Jerry says, "Is that button too high?" And they're talking about like the positioning of the button, which was the very first joke used in the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very first joke said in the pilot. So they were going to end it first joke, last joke, which is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And given what you think about, like how silly it is that they're being arrested and put in jail, that should have been the end.
Yeah.
And that would have actually been on my TV series top.
And considering the tone of the show, for a show that is, you know, really about nothing particular, to do it like that, to where all these things are happening and you just end it on the same joke, you know, when you bring a full circle like that, it makes sense. I mean, just
makes sense.
Yeah.
But after that, they do the credits rolling, and they show Jerry standing up there in his orange jumpsuit, telling jokes to these inmates who don't care about him, and George is scared, and Kramer's being Kramer, and it just was silly. It ruined the last joke. And for a series that was built upon Jerry Seinfeld's comedy and his stand-up comedy, who is a brilliant joke writer, and Larry David, who is also a brilliant joke writer.
Yeah.
you ruin it. You ruin the like you said, the perfect ending of jokes. So that's
So for the both of you, would take away that end scene? Would it have been where would it have ranked just as a finale? Would it have been okay? It's fine. Would it have been brilliant? Or
brilliant.
like,
I just
yeah,
said brilliant.
would have been. So would it have been up there on your list? Would it have
Yeah.
been like one of the best endings?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
What about
telling
you,
you.
Brian?
The last scene and ruined it for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as upset with the final scene as Dean is and all that. I mean, honestly, that's a series. The one nice thing about that series is there weren't any burning answers they had to wrap
Sure.
up. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, there were just the whole series was about them, and just their, as we know, if you're a fan, that their daily lives. You could not ever watch the finale, and you would be okay.
Sure.
You didn't miss anything necessarily. You weren't like, gee, I wonder how Kramer wound up. You know, it's just it could have just ended at any point,
Right.
and it would have been perfectly fine the way that series
You
ran.
could
You weren't interested if Jerry and Elaine were going to get back together. That would have
No.
been foolish and ridiculous if they had done stuff like that. They didn't even touch that. You know, well, I guess they teased it in the final, but. So it's okay. It's not like a huge disappointment like you guys mentioned for How I Met Your Mother and Game of Thrones. It's certainly not at that level. So
yeah. You could
go ahead.
You could have easily ended Seinfeld with Seinfeld walking out of his apartment in the last scene going, "That's it? Okay." Shut the door, and everybody going like,
"Yeah." Well, they could have been at the diner or something having lunch, like they always
right.
do. They pan out and
continue the conversation as you panned away as they're talking about nothing.
Right, and that would have been okay too. You know,
dipping back into that just a little bit. That's what I liked about the Friends finale was there was nothing too crazy about it.
Right.
They all kind of leave their
agree.
keys on the thing.
Yeah.
They leave, and then as they're walking down the aisleway, they go, "Do you guys want to go get some coffee?" And Chandler goes, "Sure. Where should we go?" And like it's just kind of funny because obviously they've spent the last 10 years at Central Perk, and then it pans out at the frame, and it's well done. It's nothing crazy. It doesn't blow you away, but it's just like, that's a nice little bow. It's been 10 fantastic seasons. Good.
I agree.
There. That's great.
All right. So before we get more into our favorite, that's a good one. We're going to pause for a second here. But I think it sounds like everybody agrees in if you had the opportunity, that's what's frustrating with you guys. These are shows that you enjoyed for years. They had a final season planned. It wasn't anything that ended abruptly like Quantum Leap. And why couldn't they have wrapped it up more nicely and not cram everything in the final episode?
Okay.
Didn't really work out for you guys, didn't resonate, and it kind of fell off for you guys in a disappointing ending.
Well,
so we're going to come back. Go ahead.
Hold on. First of all, you guys made a tease, didn't you? Before we went to the first break about Quantum Leap coming back.
Yeah. Oh, yes. We looked that up.
Are you me and our public on this?
I'm sorry. I know everybody's on pins and needles right now.
I am.
We have looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, Peacock is considering, the NBC streaming Peacock is considering a reboot, but we have no further details on that. So
yeah, so I was incorrect.
Bring Sam home, you motherfuckers.
Yeah. All right. So we'll take a break, and we'll come back with more of our favorite finales.
There we go.
Right back.